Thank you. Esteemed colleague Soressi, 17 years ago, in 2005, you and your research team unearthed a piece of bone that was around 50,000 years old. It turned out to be part of a highly specialized tool, intended for working leather, known as a lissoir. The tool is used to make leather soft, tough, and water resistant. The French word lisser means to smooth. A second group of archaeologists then discovered 3 more pieces of exactly the same kind of tool 35 kilometers away. The remains display a polished side, indicating that they really had been used for this specific purpose. The lissoirs were made of deer ribs, which have properties that make them ideal for this particular task. So much so, in fact, that these lissoirs of deer bone are still used by leather workers today. Essentially, deer ribs have the right degree of toughness, but also enough flexibility, so that the tool bends slightly when pressed onto the leather. A harder material, such as stone, could damage the leather, while a softer material would have no effect on the texture at all. How amazing that the tool was developed 50,000 years ago and still is in use in an unchanged form by leather workers in the present day. The site of the first discovery was the cave of Pech de la Zee in the Dordogne. The skull of a Neanderthal child was also found in the same cave, together with other Neanderthal remains and a hearth. There is nothing to indicate that anatomically modern humans also lived in this place later, which means that it really was an exclusively Neanderthal site. Around 40,000 years ago, anatomically modern humans arrived in these regions and the Neanderthals died out. It is still not clear precisely how developed the Neanderthals were. To what extent did they have specific cultural skills, for example? And did they transmit these skills to modern humans? The significance of finding the lissoirs at a Neanderthal site is that this could indicate that modern humans copied the Neanderthals' leather working technologies, a highly valuable contribution to the scientific debate on the capacities of the Neanderthals. Last year, you were awarded a Wiki grant for your research on the interaction between the Neanderthals and early modern humans. Recent research on fossil DNA reveals that present-day Europeans and Asians derived some of their genes from Neanderthals. Genetic material of Neanderthals has also been found in a 45,000-year-old Homo sapiens, which shows that interbreeding took place between them. But what was the precise nature of the contact between the two human species? How did it happen? Was interbreeding the consequence of violent domination, or was there friendly and productive interaction between the Neanderthals and the new Western European immigrants, the Homo sapiens? This is one of the key questions of your research. You start out from the observation that groups of people who regularly have friendly contact with one another share not only their genes, but also their knowledge, habits, and experience. You argue that this will be evident from the way in which artifacts are made as well. First, you demonstrate how to make something, then you let the other person try, correct them, and if necessary, show them again. That is how it works. You don't teach enemies something in this way, but rather people with whom you have friendly contact. Therefore, if archaeologists find artifacts made in exactly the same way by both human species on a sufficiently large scale, it can be assumed that they had regular social contact and that their genes were deliberately shared as well. As appealing, convincing, and inspiring as this idea may be, it is very difficult to apply in the practice of archaeological research and interpretation. The main problem is that there were so few people at that time. The estimated human population across Europe in those days, around 45,000 years ago, was something like 15,000 individuals. That is to say, a very thinly populated Europe. It was therefore sometimes thought that the two human species would never have encountered each other. However, this view has now been superseded. While there may have been very few people at that time, the number of places in Europe offering a good chance of survival was also relatively limited. The small population will have mostly been concentrated in core areas that are well known in archaeology. Finding out about the way the Neanderthals had contact with our direct ancestors is a new challenge within archaeological research. You are looking for an answer to this question using a combination of disciplines, methods, and techniques. Together with other archaeologists, but also with paleontologists and genetic experts, you are also working to elucidate complex questions relating to later stages in human evolution. Last year, the Journal of Archaeological Science published an international research article by you and 7 other scholars containing the report of an archaeological study on bone materials using a highly advanced technique, ZooMS. One of the advantages of this ZooMS is that it only requires a tiny amount of material, around 10 micrograms, to determine the animal species of the bone material in question. In future, it seems that it may even be possible to use this technique without a sample. The article describes a study of so-called barbed points, tips of spears and arrows made of bone, which were used in hunting. They originated in Mesolithic Doggerland, the landscape that has disappeared under the North Sea. The study found that in the period between approximately 11,000 and 8,000 years ago, the barbed tips were made not only of deer bones, but also of human bones. So that's exciting. It is suggested that the use of human bones was not due to their specific material properties, but had a mainly symbolic and cultural significance. Perhaps the bone came from someone who was a good hunter himself. And the arrow tip was thought to transfer these hunting skills to the user. Or perhaps the artifact was kept as a memento or as a source of power. Archaeological research conducted with human remains, in this case bones, also brings us to the ethical dimensions of this research. Human remains are increasingly subjected to ancient DNA research. At the end of the 1990s, it took about 10 years to read the total human DNA, while now it can be done in just a couple of days. It is also possible now to reconstruct the genome of extinct human species, such as the Neanderthals, from a minimal amount of DNA or even from soil samples. This yields many new opportunities for research, but also new ethical dilemmas. Last autumn, you were one of a group of 64 scholars from 31 different countries who published an important article on this particular topic in Nature. In essence, the article comprises 5 ethical guidelines for ancient DNA research and is an initiative to encourage discussion in this area. Your main motive for working on this publication is the call for vigilance that it expresses. We have seen in the past that biological differences between groups of people were magnified and that the results of genetic research can be misused for political purposes. The most extreme example, of course, being the racist theories of Nazi Germany. Gaining more insight into the contact between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens is very important for people today. It is generally known that at least 2 human species lived alongside each other in Europe for a certain period, and even more than 2 in Europe and Asia together. Yet only one of them survived, Homo sapiens, us. In your words, we know that there was a genetic exchange. If we have more information about which genetic contributions were selected, we will also gain a better understanding of modern humans, ourselves. Esteemed colleague Soressi, in 2003 you obtained your PhD on Préhistoire et Géologie du Quaternaire at the University of Bordeaux. You then worked for 5 years as a junior researcher at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology. In 2008, you went to work for INRAP in France. INRAP has over 2,000 employees and is the most important organization for archaeological research in France, and one of the most high-profile archaeological institutions in Europe, like the Faculty of Archaeology, of course. After 5 years, you came to Leiden. In particular, the research of Professor Roebroeks was what made you choose Leiden as the best place to continue your career. You are not only a successful researcher, but also a gifted teacher. You developed several bachelor's and master's courses and always receive very positive evaluations from students. During the coronavirus pandemic, you also developed a research master's course on secret skills for a successful scientist. So that's adventurous, I think. And a bachelor's course, Science Communication, Archaeology in the 21st Century. You prefer to stand alongside your students, not above them. To make sure that your lectures are as informal as possible, you sometimes even give lectures on comfortable sofas or on the lawn in front of the faculty. You also like to use unconventional learning methods, such as the Pecha concept. This compels the presenter to be creative and very, very to the point. For several years, you also organized a highly successful series of creative lunches, with 3 members of the faculty giving a short presentation on their research every month. Leiden University has an exceptional collection of archaeological artifacts, which have great value for archaeological education. However, they are not always suited for easy and unlimited use for groups of students. They may be small or unique, and sometimes also extremely fragile. The Salt Swap project, coordinated by the Center for Innovation, provides a solution for this. 3D scans are used to make the collection much more useful in the lecture hall. Together with a number of colleagues from other disciplines, you were an instigator of this new project. You were one of the founders of the European Society for the Study of Human Evolution, ESHE, and currently also its vice president. In addition, you are a member of various scientific bodies in your own discipline. Over the past decades, you have received many different prizes, fellowships and grants, including the prestigious Wiki in 2020 for your project Neanderthal Legacy. We are looking forward with great interest to the results that this project will yield. In the closed setting of this academic senate, I welcome you most cordially and wish you every success in fulfilling the position that you officially accept today. Tradition now dictates that I must ask you, do you know where the text of your lecture is at the moment? Do you have it with you?
Yes.
Are you sure? Finally, a few words of academic caution. In fulfilling your position, you should always embrace the 5 cardinal virtues of academic integrity. In other words, In your research and teaching, you should always be scrupulous, reliable, verifiable, impartial, and independent. And after that, you should enjoy a well-deserved night's sleep. Now, the order for the academic year 2020-23 is first for the cortège Archaeology, Archaeology, Governance and Global Affairs, Humanities, Law School, LUMC, the Science Faculty and the Social Sciences. And for the students and staff members of Archaeology, you can join the cortège and please take the last part of the row. Thank you.